So we have the AI NavMesh set up in our scene, or in this demo scene, but we're having it move using this AI move to function here, and that doesn't really work for what we want. We want to use the behavior tree, right? So how do we do that? Well, first off, I'm going to delete this. I don't need that here. Compile and save. And I'm going to go to my behavior tree for my enemy. Now in this tree, I can give it different branches. So I'm going to grab one branch and I'm going to grab a sequence node. What is this? Well, a sequence node is called a composite node. I can hover over it. You can see that sequence nodes executes their children from left to right, and then it will stop executing its children when one of their children fails. If a child fails, then the sequence fails. If all sequence children succeed, then the sequence succeeds. Basically, it lets us put multiple things from left to right, and it will do all of those until one of them fails. From here, I'm going to drag and grab a move to node. So the first thing we want this to do in sequence is to move to something. Well, I'm going to go to my Blackboard, and I'm going to create a new key. It's going to be a vector. I'm going to call it patrol location. Save that, go back to my behavior tree, select this, and I'm going to set this to be the patrol location. So this move to node, note the color, it's purple, right? It's a task node. In this case, it moves towards a specific location or another actor if we wanted it to, because an actor has a location. As we have it now, it will tell the sequence if it succeeds once it gets to where it's supposed to go, and then it will move back up the sequence to go to the next thing. And it'll start all over again. And you have to be kind of careful with how this stuff works when you redirect it, because if you do it wrong, you can have it like freak out in a way where it succeeds and fails, succeeds and fails, succeeds and fails over and over and over again. So here's a quick flowchart that I put together. We have our enemy AI, right? Which in this case has a sequence, and it'll go from left to right, where it'll go task 1. If it succeeds, yes, then it'll go task 2. Does that succeed? Yes, go task 3. Does this succeed? No. Then it breaks and then goes back up to the sequence and checks to see if it's supposed to go somewhere else afterwards. And in this situation, tasks 4 and 5 never actually happen. They don't get touched because the order that we do these things is going to matter. For right now, we're just going to have it do one thing. But eventually, once we give it different behaviors, such as patrol left and right until an enemy comes near it or something like that, we end up having to get very intentional with how things are placed in the order which things happen in. And so back in my behavior tree, I have the move to location. I need to set the location though. I'm going to go to my BP enemy controller. And after I do the run behavior tree, I need to create a key name variable. Well, how do we do that? For this, I want to get the Blackboard. So I'm going to right click and I'll do get Blackboard. And I want to set value as vector. I'll connect the execution pin here. Well, what do we want to make? So I need to make a key name. So I'm going to drag this down and I'll promote the variable. And I need to call this the exact name I gave, which is patrol location. So this has to match this perfectly. Patrol location. Otherwise it doesn't work. Compile and save, just make sure that works. Thing here. So then, now that that's set, our behavior tree is going to move to the patrol location. With the default value, I created the variable. I forgot to actually call it something. So this default value, this is what needs to match. It needs to be patrol location. So it has to match the name of the key in the Blackboard perfectly. So you have that compile and save, press play. And there we go. It is now moves to the center point. If I actually look at the behavior tree, I can see how it actually behaves. So let's actually undock this so we can see it. So I can see it as it goes through the... Ooh, and now it's freaking out. Why is this? Well, because when our enemy is moving, right, it can keep executing, but it doesn't succeed. So it just kind of keeps doing that same thing over and over again until it succeeds. Once it gets to the middle, once it gets to its target location, it has succeeded. It doesn't have anywhere else for it to go, right? That's part of the diagram that I showed. Yeah, in that diagram, we have the sequence where it goes through the task. We only have the one task, right? So it's going to keep doing that over and over again. But it keeps succeeding and then keeps failing immediately because it starts to move a little bit. And it's just going to freak out. That's why it was spazzing out a bit. But that's all right. We're going to be able to work through it and fix that. So at this stage, I'm done with my test map. So I'm actually going to go ahead and delete some stuff. And I'm going to reset my values for my move and my constraints. And then I'm going to go back to my map, my dungeon map. Save all this. All right, so you are going to need to do this next part to make this work yourself, right? So if you haven't already done so, which I don't think you have, fine. We can go into our BP enemy controller, and I'm going to delete the set value as vector. Get rid of that. You should have your behavior tree set up already like this. And I'll delete this variable here. I don't need this either. And then for your BT enemy, your tree, go ahead and set up your sequence node and your move to node. Then go ahead and go to your Blackboard and create a new key, a vector key for patrol location. Then go back to your behavior tree and set the move to Blackboard key to patrol location. So that way you're at the same part that I am. Now in your map, make sure you have an enemy that is somewhere in a flat space. Once you have your enemy at a flat space, let's go ahead and create a NavMesh. If you don't have a flat space to work with, make one. You can always delete it later. Let's go and add that NavMesh. So up the top, go here to volumes, and you want NavMesh bounds volume. And set the location along the Y to be 0. And you want to scale it so it covers most of the area of what you're talking about. If you press P on your keyboard, it'll show the NavMesh, except it's not going to show anything yet because honestly our ground's too thin. It doesn't want to work. So we'll have to make it thicker. So go to your content drawer and you're going to open up your tile map. And you have your different layers here. The foreground should be the only one that has layers collide on. So we can go up here in the details panel and search for override collision thickness, and it's going to bug out. It gets weird sometimes. So you're going to need to click a different layer, then go back into it. And it's actually going to be right here. So you can set the thickness to be some value. I'm going to do 200. Then hit save. And go back to my scene. I can see, okay, well, I have a NavMesh and it is showing. Right? It's popping out the back, which maybe not perfectly where we want it to be. And I can go ahead and show my collision just so I can really tell what's going on here. Yeah, that works. Maybe I want to make mine a little bit thicker. Let's see what that does. And that's did not really do what I wanted to do. I can see that it's way too thick. That's design. So I'm going to set it back to just 220. That works for me right now, at least. Now that NavMesh volume is looking at the ground for the colliders, and it's going to add in a space for the enemy to move in that space. Mine is going to be bigger than yours needs to be. Yours does not need to be as big as mine. You'd probably get away with 180, 200, but this is a little bit easier to see. And then I'm going to grab my NavMesh volume and I'm going to shrink it along the Z. So I only want it to be just big enough to encapsulate the ground. I don't want it to be too big, because if it's too big, then you can run into some issues with bugs where it'll calculate things that you don't want to be, or generally just waste compute cycles. And now let's get this moving so it moves over to the right. All right, I'm going to grab a simple shape. I'm going to grab a cube. Move this over, set the Y to 0. And I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to put this right here at the end. And I'm going to take note of this location. 5,030 for me, 0, -3, something. So I'm going to actually just write that down. You should do the same thing, because we're going to make our enemy move to that location. Once we have that, go ahead and delete it. Let's make it move. So I'm going to go to my BP enemy controller. Nope, I'm actually going to go to my BT enemy and patrol locations there. I have that. Great. Blackboard, I have the patrol location where I want it to go. Great. So BP enemy controller, I'm going to right click, get Blackboard. And then from here, I will set value as vector. Make this back here. And then key name, I'm going to drag this down. I'm going to promote a variable. I don't care what I call it, because this is just temporary. We're going to be doing something a little bit different in a second. But compile and save. And also the patrol name, or the key name, to be patrol location. Again, it has to match the key perfectly. And that value where we want it to move to is, we're going to set it to that number that we identified earlier, 5030 0 -3490 for me. Yours is going to be different. Compile and save, and then press play, and you should see it move. If it didn't, it's possible that your location is a little bit off, or your spelling for your key name was wrong, or your value is too high or too low where it can't possibly get there. So if I set the height of this to be like 5,000, I'm just gonna try and go really high. It's gonna not really like that. See, it can't go up, so it doesn't want to do it. So that's another possibility. But go ahead and get that in there and just get that going, and then we know we're working. What we're going to want to do next is we're going to want to make it so once it gets there, it'll turn back and go the other direction. We also want the range to be kind of random in there. We don't want to have to go left and right for every single thing. So those are steps we'll take in upcoming videos. But that's going to be it for this one. Thanks.